Hey, are you tired of the Exorcist films yet? Well, buckle up because you're about to get two more. And today, Doug is going to look into his crystal ball and he's going to tell you what he sees in the future.
That's right. I need everyone to concentrate on the crystal ball. And as we concentrate, we look deep into the crystal. It says flop. What does that mean?
Flop? You see
Flop.
flop?
Flop.
Oh, okay.
Probably because there is no direct storyline from the original Exorcist to where we're at now. This story has gone 20 different places with 50 different ideas, and I have no idea where you can take it. But that being said, I have a bad way to take it. Basically, I'm thinking that going on to the future, it's just going to be Regan against evil. You know, they're going to have some weird jump scares and some cut up girls, and they're going to be talking weird. And I think it's going to get a little bit more supernatural than we're expecting. So, since we're already to that supernatural area and there's no way to change it, here's where we're going with parts 2 and 3. So, Deceiver, we know the name of the second movie, which is actually the 6th or 7th. I've lost count. But the second movie in the trilogy from Blumhouse that's going to be a sequel to The Exorcist. God, this is more confusing than Rambo. So anyway, here we go. Deceiver. 2 years later, things are starting to calm down. And it pans up to a tree, and there you see a little locust. And it flies and the camera starts falling. I promise this will be the only reference to The Exorcist Part 2, just a great way to kind of introduce where everyone is 2 years later. So you're following the bug around and it shows up at a gate that's just outside of a big forest. You know, you're not exactly sure what it is. And this car pulls up with groceries and you see Tony, who is Catherine's father from Believer, coming out, unlocking the gate, getting the groceries, locking the gate back up, and heading back into the woods. You find out later that Tony and Miranda have pulled their kids out of school. They no longer go to church. They are stuck, or they just do everything on their own. They do their own worshiping. They're not against God. They're not against people. They still actually interact. You know, friends come over, but they have completely blocked themselves off from the world. They are teaching the kids how they want to teach, and it is a full-on religious place at their house. So that's where they are. You fly on and you find the nurse. The nurse is still doing her thing. She's working, but she's definitely a part of this. Keeps going around. You see, I believe his name was Stuart. He was the Pentecostal priest. The pastor, I believe they were Baptists. Pastor Don, he's still doing his preacher stuff. Bug flies around. You see I apologize if I messed up this name, but Dr. Beehive, who was the herbalist or the woman who threw stuff in the fire and created the Lost Monster. She's still doing her thing. And then finally it flies into a church and you see Victor sitting there singing along with everyone. Song ends, he puts the book down, they say, God be with you, and they go walking out, and it pans out and you see Victor is there by himself. His daughter does not go to church with him. So the movie goes on and weird things are starting to happen again. It's nothing too crazy, but, you know, policeman walking through the park one day looks up and sees a dead dog hanging from a tree with a noose around its neck. There are weird stuff happening to animals and around the area, and people are starting to talk, and immediately they look at Victor and they're like, you know, is your daughter doing something again? Well, we've come to find out that Angela is kind of retracted back. She's a loner, you know, she's not dressing up in the nice girly clothes she's in. She's just in jeans and, you know, t-shirt, and not wearing makeup, not trying to make herself pretty. She's in high school now, so, you know, she's starting to get that mindset. But no, she is just on her own. She goes to school, she sits there, she doesn't get involved, goes home. That's basically what her life is. Victor and her hardly talk. You can see there's some tension. Obviously, some weird stuff has been happening over the past few years, or just some, you know, she hasn't dealt with it yet. But they do make a monthly trek out to the countryside where they meet up with Chris MacNeil. And about once a month they go out. And whenever Angela and Victor go out and visit them, Angela and Chris, it's almost like her mood gets better. She talks more, and they spend a lot of time playing cards by themselves while Victor and Regan, who is now a main character, taking care of her mom, go out and they always talk, and they're talking about issues that are happening around, the weird things that are happening around, but they're also talking about Angela and how she hasn't really moved past this yet. And things start getting worse throughout the town, and now another girl has gone missing. Another 12-year-old, 13-year-old girl, same age as Angela was, and you come to find out it was the same age that Regan was when she was that age as well. And so it's all about finding this girl again. And Victor, having done this before, feels compelled to help. He's kind of changed from part one, the non-believer. He is now the believer. He's a fairly religious person, and he needs to help with this. In the meantime, there is this new female detective that comes around, and she's kind of heading up all this weird stuff that's happened, and her and Victor get a little friendship going on, stuff like that. Move on throughout the movie, and they do find the girl. Very similar to the way it happened before. She goes missing for 3 days. She comes back. She's acting weird, and they know exactly what's happening. So they have to reach out to the Super Friends, basically. And so they're trying to bring in some of these people, but Miranda and Tony refuse to help. They're not really in part two that much. They're not in part two too much. Haven't been using the ball. I need to use that more. Anyway, they try bringing the crew together. The drive out, Stuart, the Pentecostal, starts seeing deer. He's just driving out to the countryside where they're going to do this. They're going to do this out at Chris's estate. She's rich. She has plenty of room. It's nice and quiet. They don't have to worry about the town getting involved and everything like that, or hurting or anything like that. And on his way out, he sees a deer, and then he sees another deer, and all of a sudden his car is attacked by multiple deer, and they're being hit and flipping in. It's a very brutal scene. The deer gets flipped over into the windshield and just starts kicking and kills Stuart. So this postpones the exorcism that they are planning because they've lost one of their members. This is weird. Is it a coincidence that he hit a deer? But why are there 3 dead deer around the car and multiple, his car's been trashed, and allegedly he hit one deer that killed him, but yet his car has been trashed. Come to find out, yeah, he was attacked. All this weird stuff happening. So anyway, you can kind of take part two where you want to go and everything like that. But as the climax comes, you start seeing Angela kind of speak up a little bit more and be more involved in everything like that. And she's like, I can stop this demon. And, she just walks out there and she says something in a language you don't understand. And boom, the demon's gone. The girl or boy, whatever, the 12-year-old is fine. Literally everything that's been happening. And then Angela walks up and says, blah, 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 blah. And some kind of weird language that, nobody recognizes or anything like that. And the person is fine. And then they ask her, where'd you learn that language? And she's like, what language? And you start wondering what's happening. What's weird? Is she possessed by an angel? Does she have this and everything like that? And so as the movie winds down, you start thinking, well, maybe Angela's been possessed by an angel, is being helped, and now she is going to be the person that's going to fight Beelzebub and defeat Beelzebub. And it's like, okay, where's this movie going? What's happening? So anyway, Victor and Detective Julie Willis is her name. She is sitting there talking with Victor, and they're talking about all the weird stuff. And just as they're about to split off, Victor turns, he's like, with all this weird stuff happening, how are you staying calm? Have you seen crazy stuff like this before? And she kind of turned around and went, well, there was this one time where this old lady tried to chop off my head with medical shears. Winks at him and turns around and walks away. That's the last we see of her in part two.
Right.
So it's Bill's daughter
from part three.
of the original trilogy?
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
You've already destroyed this saga, so let's bring it all in. We're bringing a whole thing around, but you don't find that out. And again, if you haven't seen part 3, that doesn't make much sense. But that's kind of gives a little something to the fans. A little like, hey, all right, we're starting to get the crew together. Here it comes. Now I will let you know. Yeah, it isn't like Father Marin's twin brother's son is going to show up or anything like that. Don't worry about that. This is as far back as we go with that. So anyway, it's like, ooh, there's a nice little twist you didn't see coming. And then, it kind of fades to black. And then, you're back out in the Chris MacNeil's estate. And, Victor and Regan are walking around. And, it's like, okay, well, hopefully things will get back to normal and everything. And then the music plays and the camera kind of pans around. It's beautiful and the music is nice. And then it pans into the house where Chris and Angela are sitting there playing cards. And then Angela looks up and her eyes are black and you can see things start to create on her. And then it pans over to Chris and she has the same thing. And they start talking to each other. And Angela's like, listen here, I've been waiting for this moment for years, and you're not going to mess this up with some prophecy that isn't even going to come real. And then you hear Chris talk, and she's just like, you're wasting your time. You think you can make this happen, and you can't. Stop now. And they just kind of go back and forth, and Angela is telling Chris how she's weak and how she's given up, and why give up? Why listen to what the prophecies say? Why not just go ahead and do what you want to do? And basically what you're coming to find out is Angela, who was and has been possessed by a demon called Lamashtu or something like that, is speaking with Chris, who has been possessed by Pazuzu since Father Damien died. So everything that's happened from the original movie, none of it had to do with Pazuzu, because Pazuzu has been with Chris this entire time. That's why she quit acting. That's why she got into all this exorcist stuff, was because Pazuzu wanted to know everything. How do I, because someday Pazuzu, who is the devil, we come to find out, wants to make sure that when the apocalypse happens, he can show up and not miss a beat. So he's just been preparing over the last 40, 50 years for whenever the apocalypse does happen. And in the meantime, he's been possessing a few kids, because he's evil and everything like that. So that's how part 2 ends, is you find out that Pazuzu has been in Chris MacNeil since day one, while Lamashtu is a new demon who wants to start the apocalypse early and believes he can. So that's kind of how part 2 ends. I'm not sure how you can explain that, and it's cheesy as crap, but it's a direction this place can go.
So Lamashtu is the actual demon that was in Believer, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And that's why Regan knew, or I keep saying Regan, that's why Chris knew immediately when she walked in, this isn't the same demon I've dealt with, because, well, the same demon I dealt with is in me. I've been part of me. And that's why Lamashtu stabbed Chris with a crucifix in the eyes, because he knew, I'm going to say Lamashtu, I'm saying he, we're just going to call him he. He knew that with the crucifix of God and the damage, that would at least slow down Pazuzu,
right?
Too many names
Same
here.
thing.
Yeah, true. So he could finish his mission with the 2 girls.
It's interesting.
And then in part 3, I haven't gone deep into this, but maybe we'll do this again sometime after part 2. But in part 3, it's a team up, and Pazuzu has to make a call he never wanted to make.
To LeBron James?
To God. Pazuzu is the hero.
Wow.
in a way.
Interesting.
Oh, well, I'll tell you, the movie that you described could actually be entertaining, I guess,
It is.
if it's
It is.
done the right way.
See, that's the problem with way everything went. First off, it never part 2 or any of these should never have been made. We've said this 100
Right.
times. 100 people have said that 1,000 times. So it's been
Except
said.
Exorcist 3.
Well, yes, as good as Exorcist 3 is, it didn't need to be. I mean, the only reason Exorcist 3 exists is because Exorcist 2 happened.
Exactly.
And they didn't want it to end like that. But yet people keep coming in and grabbing it. It's like, well, let's try to get some more money. Let's try to get some more. Let's try to make something good.
Right.
How about that?
I agree. Yeah.
Original.
It should have just been a one and done.
So, yeah, I mean, between the strobe lights and whatever happened in part 2, between, the beginning and Dominion and all that supernatural stuff that happened and whatever they did in Believer, you can't make this just a straight up religious movie anymore, which is what part 1 was. That's what the original one was. It had all
deviated.
Everything with religion and faith. You can't do that anymore. So it is now a supernatural. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you see Dean and Sam show up in part 2 or 3, because that's kind of where they went with it. And that's not what made the original so great. So yeah, that's why I kind of went cheesy.
Oh, hey,
that I didn't. I was just reading whatever you said.
Right.
So yeah, that was my kind of idea for part 2. Again, it got kind of weird. And so it's the only way you can do weird.
Right.
Or you can, that's the only way you can go with this franchise. I mean, I don't know if you can bring it back.
But what you described would be, it would be interesting. It would be a nice little twist. It would be something that you didn't see coming. So it would be different and could actually play well if they did it right. But as we all know, that probably ain't going to happen.
Like I said, what they'll probably do is
rehash one of the other movies.
Yeah, Pazuzu will show up again somehow. I don't know who he'll possess. I don't know who's going to be in part 2 and part 3. Right. Other than, I think Chris. I saw Victor and Angela are, and then of course Regan and Chris, and that's it. That's all.
Think about how scary Chris would be, possessed with no eyes. I mean, that would be. How could you not do that now? That would be like part 3. The trilogy is ending. It's like she's guiding them for all of part 2, and then in part 3 she turns out to be possessed by Pazuzu. Takes off the scarf.
The movie's titled Deceiver, so obviously there's got to be. You would think if they're going to name it Deceiver that there's got to be some deception in the movie, right? So you're right. Somebody that you would least expect has got to be the possessed one. Here. There's got to be that kind of a twist. So interesting.
I liked your theory about, there's another missing girl. I have a spin on that. What they could do is, I think in the next movie, Angela will still be possessed, because I'm thinking that the demon played a trick on them in Believer when he said that he would let one girl live. So I'm thinking, you should never make a deal with the devil, right? Like, that's the mistake of Adam and Eve. So when they made that deal, the demon did not really leave Angela. So then in part 2, I think for some reason they think that the demon that's possessed Angela knows where this other missing girl is. So they can't perform an exorcism on her until they've gotten the demon to spill some information about where to find this missing girl. So Victor has to talk to his own possessed daughter to try to get clues out of this demon.
Ooh.
And he can't.
Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah. Like you have to trick the demon into spilling something it didn't mean to spill, so that you can finally perform the exorcism and save your daughter. But that's the only way they could save his daughter and this missing girl. So I think that would be cool.
All I want is for the end of the trilogy for them to end up back in Regan's bedroom.
Well, it got destroyed in part 2, remember?
What's that?
Oh, it didn't exist. Sorry.
And then it's Regan and Chris, and it's the final showdown, or Regan has to exorcise because, I mean, it is the devil. So he obviously, turns at the end, and Regan has her mom down on the floor, and she's just yelling, "Take me!" And it takes her, and she goes and runs and jumps out the window and misses the staircase just short and just lands at top and doesn't fall down the stairs. Just because you've already screwed this up so much, you might as well just finish it with a comedy note.
That's what part 3 is going to be. Is going to be written by the Farrelly brothers.
There you go.
They're gonna.
No, make part 3 as serious as you want. It's, do this whole supernatural thing, but just end it with a laugh. What the heck?
Here's a storyline I think they set up in part 1 that I think they probably will try to finish in part 2 and 3 if they're smart.
So
I think Catherine's dad, since he basically caused Catherine to die in the last film and messed up the exorcism, I think he's going to get a redemption arc. So I'm thinking that somehow he's going to be, he's going to get his moment to be a good character and make a comeback.
I had that thought for
the very beginning of Believer, they set him up as like a racist and a jerk in the police station. So that's your introduction to him. And then that kind of telegraphs at the end he might sabotage, not on purpose, but he might do something to mess up the exorcism. Mm-hmm. So I think in the sequels, you've got to bring him back somehow. And I think he'll be a key to maybe saving Angela, who I think will still be possessed. But I also think that the team, that basically I think in Believer, the team failed at their exorcism because they gave in to the demon, made this deal. They got swindled. So I think somewhere in the trilogy, they're going to have to perform a successful exorcism. So the group will have a comeback arc, and so will Catherine's dad as an individual.
Yeah. I mean, reading a lot of the ideas and everything, and then, of course, the same director who did the Halloween trilogy, the last one that just came out, it feels like he's going the same way. It's not just one person helping, or it's not one person sacrificing. It's all about the team coming together, the community coming together. You don't have to be a Catholic person to fight off demons. You can be a Protestant, a Baptist, a Jewish person, Protestant, I don't want to mess up any of the religions. Nathan knows them all, but you can be everything. And there's a song I used to play in a Christian rock band, so we listened to a lot of Christian music back in the day, and there was a song by somebody that I apologize, but anyway, it said it all comes down to a man dying on the cross for your sins. And obviously it doesn't bring in all the religions, but if you think about it, you've got Catholicism, you've got Baptists, you got Church of Christ, you got Church of Christ of the Latter-day Saints, you got Church of Christ of the blah, 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 blah. And there's 50,000 different denominations out there, but it's all about Jesus dying on the cross for our sins. It's all the same thing. So even with different religions who don't have Jesus in there, there's so many comparisons and so many things that one religion believes, well, another religion believes the same thing. There's just a couple little differences here and there. Or, we don't call it God, we call him Allah, or, different things like that, or Buddha or whatever. So I think that's kind of where they're going with that, is like, let's make it not just about Jesus, not just about the Catholics. We got to bring everybody in. Even the non-believers can have positive mojo on that, which is hard to do, because if there's a girl being possessed, there's obviously a demon, therefore there's obviously a God. But I think that's kind of where they're going with that. So yeah, I mean, I thought of that too when I was thinking of part 3, Tony getting a redemption of some sort. And I can totally see that. I think it won't be a big one. I think it'll be he'll sacrifice himself probably towards the end of part 2.
Oh, you're right. He probably has to die.
Yeah. Oh, he'll definitely.
Somebody has to.
Tony's dying.
Dead meat.
Yeah. Stewart's dying more than likely. You know, you're gonna lose one or two of the preachers and one or two of the Justice League from Believer. I would assume Chris isn't going to make it past part 2. Chris MacNeil will be dead, so she doesn't have to come back for part 3.
Too expensive.
She doesn't want to do it.
She doesn't want to do it. They're probably just going to CG her face into the next one.
She'll probably have like 6 lines, be a prominent character, but not have to act or talk throughout most of it, and then she'll die towards the end as well, right after Tony.
You are probably right about in the theology of the film. At the end of Believer, the nurse's monologue basically kind of steered the religion of the film more towards what they call universalism, where people who are into that believe all religions are the same thing. I didn't expect that when I was watching it, because the way I viewed even the herb doctor, I thought that was like something they took out of the Dead Sea Scrolls as like a splinter group of the Jews. So when I watched the film, I thought they were just bringing the denominations together up until the end. And I'm like, oh, okay, they are trying to bring all religions and all views in here. I do think that is what they're trying to do. That is in contrast to the original trilogy. So we'll see what they do with the next one. That'll be interesting to see. But I liked what they did with the first, with Believer, in terms of that, the denominations coming together, because people are always saying like, well, how do I know which church to go to? Because all these denominations say they're right and they're all fighting each other. So it was cool to see them come together in like this little neighborhood community type thing, which I think is more reflective of the early church. So I liked that. I'm wondering if they'll keep going with that or not. But I do have a name for the third film.
Oh, so we have Believer, Deceiver.
Mine was Dreamweaver.
Dreamweaver, the Meat Cleaver.
Oh, come on. You could use it.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Bieber.
Bieber, as in Justin. Turns out that he's been behind the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm not going to watch that movie.
Yes, he's possessed Chris MacNeil.
It hurt me to bring in George C. Scott's daughter from part 3 into this movie. You can't bring in Justin Bieber.
What's a Justice Bieber?
Anyway.
All right. That's
what the crystal ball says. So anyone who's making comments, I do want to point out that this is not from my brain. I did not come up with this. This thing right here, it's heavier than I thought. It's told me everything. And it says you should also like and subscribe. So I'm just saying what this is telling me to say.
Awesome. Well, we'll find out if the crystal ball is correct in, I think, July of 2025.
Boy, I sure can't wait.
It was April 18th.
Or maybe that's it. I don't know. I don't care.
April 18th, 2025. I have a hot take.
Hot take.
For Exorcist Deceiver. I'm wondering if you guys will agree. I think David Gordon Green is going to get fired off of Deceiver.
You think he will be fired before they even start production?
Yes. I think he will get replaced.
Really?
Yeah. That's not the worst. I mean, it makes sense, but unfortunately, I don't think it's his fault. I mean,
they gave him
did he write it?
I was going to say they gave him a bad script, but then I realized he's the writer. Yes.
He is one of the writers, isn't he? Yeah.
So maybe they'll let him direct if they get someone else to write the script. Because the script was, to me, the problem. The film was pretty gorgeous. It was shot well, but the script, it wasn't well researched, and it wasn't, it wasn't cohesive. Okay, if they're smart, they'll get another writer and then they'll let him film it. I'm okay with him filming it.
Is William Blatty still alive?
He's probably like, I have washed my hands of this. I
I don't
tried to
know.
help you out with 3,
I
and you
think
still messed it up. So I'm done.
I
I'm out.
I know Friedkin's dead. I think Blady is too.
Wow.
That's my hot take.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. We will find all of this out. April of 2025 is when the next film comes out. So we'll see if the crystal ball was accurate, if Nathan's prediction comes true. That's it. We've covered The Exorcist. We're done. We've done them all. And you can check out those videos on our YouTube page. That'll do it. And we will see you next time with some more movies.